Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. Israel and Syria have reached a ceasefire deal after days of violence in Sweida province, according to a US envoy. Turkey, Jordan and regional actors back the truce, which comes after Israeli strikes in Damascus and demands for Syrian withdrawal to protect Druze communities. Meanwhile, a war monitor says nearly 720 people have died in a week of fighting in Druze-majority Sweida, including mass executions. The dead include Druze fighters, civilians, government troops and Bedouins, with Israeli strikes also killing 15 soldiers. South Korea's jailed ex-president Yoon Suk-yeol faces new charges over his 2024 martial law declaration. Prosecutors say he abused authority, erased records and blocked arrests during the crackdown. Gaza officials say 26 Palestinians were killed and over 100 injured in strikes near two southern aid sites. Civil defense spokesman accused Israel of opening fire on areas near Khan Yunis and Rafah. Hamas's armed wing says it may revert to demanding a full peace deal if current ceasefire talks collapse. Spokesman Abu Abuda claims Israel has rejected Hamas's offer to release hostages in exchange for a permanent ceasefire. Donald Trump has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, its owners and Rupert Murdoch over a report linking him to Jeffrey Epstein. Wall Street Journal owner Dow Jones says it stands by its reporting and will vigorously defend against the defamation claim. Russia launches over 300 drones and 30 missiles overnight, hitting Odessa and causing blackouts in Sumy. Ukrainian officials say one person died and a residential building was set ablaze in Odessa during the attack. Meanwhile, Moscow says its air defences intercepted 13 drones in a separate overnight barrage. Japan's top negotiator will visit Washington next week for talks to avoid a 25% US tariff on Japanese imports. Tokyo is racing to reach a deal before President Trump's August 1st deadline. Now this hour we start in the Middle East, where Syrian security forces have begun deploying the Druze-majority province of Sweida, following nearly a week of intense sectarian violence that has left over 700 people dead. The Syrian Interior Forces stated that the deployment aims to restore order and protect civilians. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights also reported that at least 718 people have died since Sunday, including 146 Druze fighters and 245 civilians. 287 government troops and 18 Bedouin fighters were also killed in the clashes, according to the same monitor. The violence escalated with Israeli airstrikes which claimed lives of 15 government troops. In response to the escalating violence, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara announced an immediate ceasefire in Sweida on Saturday. This move comes as the government seeks to de-escalate tensions and prevent further bloodshed. The ceasefire is expected to give security forces time to stabilise the region and prevent further sectarian conflict. The situation remains intense, but with both Druze and Bedouin factions entrenched in ongoing clashes. We're now joined by Professor Rohan Gunaratne, who's an international security expert, and he joins us live from Singapore. Professor Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us as always. Professor, what security risks do you see in the deployment of government forces to Sweida, and how might this affect local stability and the status of this newly announced ceasefire?
Thomas, what we have seen is that the Syrian government forces are primarily Islamists from Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a former terrorist group that killed so many non-Muslims and Muslims. So if the Syrian forces are deployed south of Baghdad, where the Druze live, certainly they will ill-treat and humiliate and even arrest and kill the Druze population. So it is paramount that Ahmad al-Shara, the current president of Syria, does not deploy the Syrian security forces south of Damascus. That is the only way to guarantee the safety and the security of the Druze population.
Professor Gunaratne, how could external actors, both regional or international, influence the evolution or possible evolution of violence in southern Syria? As you know, we have many international actors at play, including Jordan, including Turkey, who has a lot of interest in the region, even Moscow. How do you see this influence, these countries and actors influence this situation?
The international community should assist Syria to transform its military, which consists largely of extremist and terrorist groups, into a secular military force where they recruit not only Muslims but Christians, Alawites, Kurds, and Druze. Right now, no one trusts the security forces of Syria. This transformation should take place so that the other communities will respect the Syrian military. Otherwise, what will happen is, as in the past, when the Christians were attacked, when the Kurds were attacked, when the Alawites or the Shia communities were attacked, the Druze will also be attacked. All communities should be treated equally in Syria. So that is only then we will have peace in Syria. And another very important thing, Ahmad al-Shara is an Islamist. Islamist rule should not be brought into the Syrian equation. Syria has multi-ethnic and multi-religious communities. It should be a secular state. It should not impose Sharia law, and it should never advocate that that Syria is only for the Islamists. It is for all communities, all religious groups.
Rohan Gunaratne, Donald Trump lifted sanctions on Syria back in May and said he was going to give Syria a chance at greatness. Just earlier this month, we saw a major wave of investments, which has come 6 months after the fall of Assad. This includes a $7 billion energy infrastructure project deal led by Qatar. How do you think if this wave of international investment is going to move forward, if it is, given this current look which is going on in the south of the country?
US, Qatar, Europe, Turkey, and many other countries are keen to invest in Syria, and that is the way forward. But they must also send a very clear message to Ahmad al-Shara. No Islamism, no Sharia, equal treatment for all communities. If this kind of conflict persists against the Druze, against the Alawites, the Kurds, and other minorities, then the investors will withdraw those investments, or they will not continue with their investment. The only way Syria can become a great nation is to have a secular state where all communities can live peacefully, their religions and their cultures are preserved.
Yes, Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you very much for joining us on the programme. Pleasure to have you as always. We now move on, but stay in the Indo-Pacific, where a special counsel team has indicted former President Yoon Suk Yeol on charges of abuse of authority over his short-lived imposition of martial law. It marks Yoon's third indictment with detention following previous ones in January and in March related to his martial law declaration on December the 3rd and other power abuse charges. According to the team led by Special Counsel Cho Yeon-suk, Yoon is accused of violating the rights of cabinet members during the martial law deliberation process. As per reports, Yoon retroactively drafted the martial law declaration ordering the deletion of records from encrypted phones and other offences. Reports suggest that Yoon also allegedly doctored the martial law declaration in a way that has made it appear as though Han and Kim had it signed off after the National Assembly approved of lifting the decree and then ordered the document to be discarded. The treason charge, however, was not included in the indictment as the team is still reviewing it. The indictment came after the team attempted to question Yoon multiple times following his second detention last week, but Yoon declined to appear. We're now joined. We are covering this story coming out of South Korea. Former President Yoon Suk-yeol has been indicted once again, this time for his... Okay, we're now joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who's a journalist located in the South Korean capital. Dr. Kumar, thank you very much for joining us on the program. How are people reacting to this? How are the South Korean public reacting to this new indictment on the former leader of South Korea? We know that Yoon had a huge support base when he was going through his impeachment trial. What does this third indictment mean for the political stability of South Korea?
Politically, Korea is very stable with the new government, and the new government is busy in managing emergency responses because of these rains, the torrential rains which have caused a huge disaster here. As you know, more than 6,000, 7,000 people have been evacuated and many are still in progress. Politically, Korea is very stable right now, but when you see the mood of the people, especially the supporters of former President Yoon, they are very disappointed with the manner it is being handled, because they think that it is going very smoothly, like very fastly. They don't want a kind of smooth legal procedures to be in place. But the common people here, those who are not supporting former President Yoon, they think it as a very common procedure, very legal procedure, and they want to close the chapter of former President Yoon. When I say close the chapter, that means like they are fed up with this, all those legal procedures and legal terminologies coming out in mass media and in the public. So common mood here is that let's say goodbye to him, let the law take its course, and if he has to be punished, let the law punish it. So this is the mood of the common people. But as you know, Koreans are very polarized after this not successful martial law. These polarizations are somewhere affecting the views of the people. But I can tell you that people here are determined to say goodbye.
Dr. Kumar, you said that you feel like political stability has returned to Seoul, even after this hugely long process which had happened back in December. How might this legal battle affect public trust in Korea's democratic institution, or has that already been recovered, as you said?
Yes, as he is being charged, he means the former President Yoon is charged not only to dismantle and disturb the constitutional order, but he is also being charged of distorting the evidences in the form of encrypted phone calls or encrypted data, and also undermining undermining to convene the cabinet meeting, and many cabinet members of his government also is thinking that their rights also had been undermined. So when you see the political turmoil, even among the Yoon supporters, there is a division. When I say Yoon supporters, I am talking about the people who were with him, yes, in his government, during his government. So this is the situation right now. But people also want it to conclude very soon. That's why I think the court and the special counsel is trying to somehow conclude the legal procedures swiftly and come on track. And we also have to be very concerned about the new challenges that the new government is facing. The immediate problems are of this torrential rain, but Trump tariff, still the process is ongoing. So government has those challenges. And opposition party also do not want this to be very much politicized. They want to politicize the tariff and the economic security insecurity battle. They want to focus on that, not this legal procedures right now.
Of course. Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. You are staying with us to discuss further updates in the region. But however, we move now to Europe, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia launched over 30 missiles and 300 drones in an overnight attack. He further added that the attack damaged critical infrastructure in Sumy, where several thousand families suffered power cuts. This comes after Russian forces staged a mass drone attack on the Ukrainian Black Sea port of Odessa, setting ablaze at least one multi-story apartment building and killing one resident, as per the city mayor. Meanwhile, an unmanned aerial vehicle flying towards Moscow has been downed, as per Russian Mayor Sergei Sobyanin. The mayor said that since midnight, a total of 13 drones targeting Moscow have been shot down. We're now joined by Joshua Barnes, who's an anchor and correspondent. He joins us live from the newsroom. Joshua, what more details can you give us about these overnight strikes from both sides in this conflict?
Well, yes, Thomas, you've detailed a lot about the actual strikes themselves, but I want to provide some context on this. Of course, a number of strikes taking place from both nations, targeting both nations, which we've seen sort of getting worse and getting more extreme in terms of the numbers. This over 300 reported by Ukraine a week after strikes of drones and missiles. Over 700 with a record number, then 2 days later over 600. So this really is a warfare plan. Ukraine, on the flip side, have also been hitting Russia. There have been reports of drones targeting Moscow as well as regions closer to the Ukrainian border. Now, both sides say that they're not targeting civilian infrastructure, but casualties and injuries have been reported. The situation, of course, has got bad to a point where US President Donald Trump has spoken about the bloodshed and the killing, of course, not just through these aerial assaults, but also on the battlefields. Thousands of military deaths reported each week by both sides. So this situation is one that is seemingly continuing along a similar pattern that we have seen of overnight bombardments with critical infrastructure targeted, potential civilian infrastructure also targeted as well. There is a call, of course, for a ceasefire in this war that is now into its fourth year. Two direct conversations between Russia and Ukraine taking place in Istanbul. What we've seen from that is prisoner of war swaps with bodies as well of deceased soldiers being passed over between the countries. But ultimately, pressure from the US has led to a deadline for Vladimir Putin's government to consider. He gave 50 days for Russia to agree to a ceasefire that was unanimously agreed by Ukraine, Western allies and the United States themselves. That would, of course, allow time for further discussions with no more bloodshed, no more potential civilian casualties, and allowing a roadmap to move forward towards a potential full-time ceasefire.
Joshua, for those who don't follow this conflict on a daily basis, they may have seen, however, Donald Trump's statements that peace is diplomatically coming close. Can you give us the diplomatic developments, where the leaders stand in regard to this, their wants, their needs, just some context behind if we are perhaps close to seeing this peace deal on paper yet?
Well, yes, Thomas, I think that's an extremely important point for us to consider. Of course, any peace deal needs to be agreed by both parties, and there are certain areas in which both Ukraine and Russia fundamentally do not agree on. Ukraine do not want to concede any of the land that Russia has taken. A large part of the eastern section of Ukraine, we're looking at the Dnipropetrovsk region, also areas leading to Donetsk, the Sumy region, and others as well, along the Russian border. And by all intents and purposes, if we're believing the Russian side, they say they are continuing to march forward and gain more villages and towns as they move across Ukraine. Of course, Kyiv do not want to give up this land. They also don't want to give up Crimea. They want it returned back to them. Ukraine also want protections. They want potential peacekeeping troops if a ceasefire is agreed from potentially European nations in order to limit the opportunity for a further attack again. On the flip side, Russia, and in exact opposite to what Ukraine want, they want to keep hold of these lands. It is very important and critical land as well. A lot of rare earth minerals come from this region of Ukraine, and of course it's a strategic point for Russia to move forward with, and they'd like to claim it as their own. Also, Russia don't want Ukraine to be part of NATO. That's something that the Russian administration says is a big reason for why this war started. Vladimir Putin very strong with that. Ultimately, there are gaps as well in different things and different discussions around potential defences. Of course, Ukraine receiving a lot of aid from the West. They have done from European nations. Sanctions also placed on Russia, and the United States, of course, recently announcing a resumption to some critical defensive military assets.
Yes.
Russia wants that to stop. Ukraine say, of course, that would make them weak and vulnerable to a potential further attack. That's the dividing lines that we're seeing. Ultimately, on the battlefield, it's action as usual and deaths in the thousands weekly.
Yes, Joshua, thank you very much for your insight on that. And we will bring you any reports coming out of the Russia-Ukraine conflict as we get them. But now, once again, over to the Indo-Pacific, where Japan's chief tariff negotiator, Akazawa, announced plans to travel to Washington next week for high-level trade discussions with US officials. Let's listen in to what Akazawa had to say.
諸般の事情が許せば、米国の関税措置に関する日米協議を実施するべく、来週早々にも米国ワシントン DC を訪問する予定です。引き続き8月1日も念頭にですね、我が国の国益を守りつつ、日米双方が合意できる着地点、これをですね、探す努力を精力的に続けていきたいというふうに考えております。
Tokyo is aiming to finalise an agreement before the August the 1st deadline in hopes of avoiding President Trump's proposed 25% tariff on Japanese imports. We're now joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who's a journalist located in Seoul, South Korea. Dr. Kumar, thank you very much once again for joining us on the programme. August the 1st is the day. Multiple countries, blocs scrambling for a deal with President Donald Trump. Japan is facing a 25% tariff here. What leverage does Japan have in negotiations with the United States, and what can it bring to the table?
Japan is the largest investor in US. This should not be forgotten. And Japan is providing employment to huge number of Americans as well as the immigrants who contribute to US economy. This must not be forgotten. I am reiterating because this is the sentiment that Japanese people have right now. And they are not ready to compromise, because any compromise to this tariff would be so-called harakiri, the Japanese term. So this is the public mood and the sentiment of many in the government as well as opposition in Japan. So they are seeing it from this lens. And it should be noted that the rice prices in Japan has skyrocketed. And this is happening when US is exporting huge volume of rice to Japan. So they are considering it as an attack on their national interest. Even although the trade and tariff negotiator minister is going to hold talks with Trump, but the opposition parties and the other national parties in Japan, they are forcing Prime Minister Ishida to once again go and solve this deadlock. Japan thinks that this is a deadlock which must be resolved as soon as possible to bring Japanese economy and exports on track.
Yes, indeed. Sanjay Kumar, thank you very much for your insight and joining us on the programme as always. Now, let's next move over to the African continent, where the Congo and M23 rebel group have signed the Declaration of Principles to end fighting in eastern Congo, a sign of progress after months of talks mediated by Qatar. This declaration comes amid heavy US pressure to finalise deals that would bring peace to eastern Congo. This could also potentially attract billions of dollars of Western investment to a region rich in tantalum, gold, cobalt, copper, lithium and other minerals. M23, in the latest string of uprisings supported by Rwanda, seized Goma, eastern Congo's largest city, in January and went on to make gains across North Kivu and South Kivu provinces. The fighting has killed thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands more this year, while escalating the risk of a full-blown regional war. In March, Qatar brokered a surprise meeting between Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame, during which they called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. The Congo, and we are bringing you news from Africa now. The Congo and M23 rebel group have signed the Declaration of Principles to end fighting in the eastern Congo. This is a conflict that has been going on in the east of the country for months now, and we are now seeing diplomatic efforts by both sides, slowly but surely, to bring this conflict to an end. Optimism so far in a region that has seen so much tragedy and so much humanitarian crisis. Hundreds of thousands of people displaced, and also some prospects here of possible investment in the mineral-rich east, which is where this fighting is taking place. The M23 rebels in the latest uprisings, supported by Rwanda, they seized Goma in January and then went on to make gains in the region. Okay, we now move over to North America, where Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies were killed in an explosion at Bacalhao's training center in Monterey Park on Friday, marking the deadliest incident for the department since 1857. The deputies, part of the arson explosives detail, were believed to have been handling an explosive device that had been brought back from a previous bomb squad call. The cause of the explosion remains under investigation. Sheriff Robert Luna confirmed there were no other injuries and assured there was no ongoing threat to the community. The FBI, ATF and LA Fire Department are all involved in the investigation. The fallen deputies were identified as Detective Joshua Kelly Eklund, Detective Victor Lemus and Detective William Osborne. Luna expressed deep sorrow at the loss. Los Angeles officials, including Supervisor Janice Hahn, have pledged full support to the families and the department as the investigation continues. Here's what Sheriff Robert Luna had to say.
This morning, shortly after 7:30 a.m., an explosion occurred at our Special Enforcement Bureau, arson explosives detail facility located in the 1000 block of Northeastern Avenue in East Los Angeles, which is right behind this hill. Tragically, there were 3 sworn members who were fatally killed that were assigned to our arson explosives detail. No other department members were injured or transported to any hospitals. This is, unfortunately, the largest loss of life for us as the LA County Sheriff's Department since 1857. Between all 3 sworn members, they had served our community proudly for 74 years, and that's amongst all 3 of them collectively. 19 years, 22 years, and 30.
Now let's move over to some stories from the world of sports. Lloyd Howell Jr. has resigned as executive director of the NFL Players Association after facing intense criticism over a series of controversies, including an alleged conflict of interest, withholding key parts of an arbitration decision from players, and reports that he billed the union for expenses related to strip club visits. Spanish forward Athena del Castillo came on as a substitute to score the opening goal, and Claudia Pincer followed up with a brilliant second, leading Spain to a 2-0 victory over Switzerland on Friday. This win secured their spot in the Women's Euro semi-finals, where they'll face either France or Germany. Reigning MotoGP champion George Martin expressed his relief at returning to the racetrack at the Czech Republic Grand Prix after being sidelined for 10 of the 11 rounds due to injuries. The 27-year-old Spaniard missed the first 3 races of the season due to wrist and ankle injuries sustained in a pre-season crash. A further crash during his debut race on the Aprilia bike in Qatar in April resulted in a collapsed lung and bruised ribs. Miami Marlins third baseman Connor Norby had surgery on his broken left wrist during the All-Star break and is expected to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. The procedure, which took place in Phoenix, involved repairing his hamate bone. The 25-year-old began experiencing discomfort in his wrist during Friday's game against the Baltimore Orioles, leading his replacement on the injured list on Sunday due to wrist inflammation. Scott Dixon will start 6 places back in Sunday's Grand Prix of Toronto after exceeding the season's engine limit once again. This marks Dixon's second grid penalty of the season, following the installation of a 5th engine for the Detroit Grand Prix on June the 1st. After one of his approved Honda engines failed before the season began, Dixon has also used up 2 engines in May. Well, that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you.